A manhunt for the person who shot a health insurance company CEO dead in New York is now in its second day.
It's just before 6:45 in the morning, the sun not yet up, United Healthcare's CEO arriving at Manhattan's Hilton Hotel. Behind him, a gunman emerges from between two cars and opens fire. We're not showing the moments after, but he fires at least 3 shots at close range. As Brian Thompson falls to the ground by the wall, the gun, with silencer attached, appears to jam. He then moves calmly across the road before disappearing out of view. All this is key evidence in a truly shocking targeted shooting. Brian Thompson was 50, married with 2 sons, and the head of the health insurance division of United Healthcare, where he had worked for nearly 21 years.
This is New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch at a press conference yesterday.
A brazen, targeted attack. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. The victim was in New York City to speak at an investor conference. It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes. And as the victim was walking to the conference hotel, the suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds, striking the victim at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf. Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target. The suspect fled, first on foot, then on an e-bike.
Now, New York law enforcement are saying that the shooter is likely proficient in the use of firearms, leading to speculation that this may have been a professional hit job. And another detail has emerged today.
Investigators say they found shell casings with writing on them, including the words deny, defend, and depose. They also say they found a cell phone, granola bar wrappers, and a water bottle they believe are linked to the shooter.
The victim, Brian Thompson, earned $10.2 million last year as the CEO of United Healthcare, a branch of United Health Group. United Health Group is the biggest health insurer in the United States and worth about $440 billion. Over the past year, United Healthcare reportedly had multiple senior executives under investigation by the Department of Justice due to accusations of fraud and insider trading. The Department of Justice also launched a probe into whether United Healthcare was running a monopoly. And Brian Thompson's wife, Paulette, said he had been receiving threats connected to his job. She told NBC News this. There had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage? I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people that had been threatening him. And a lack of coverage there means, I suppose, people who were disgruntled by the fact that they'd paid a lot for insurance and then it had failed to cover them when it came to their needing a medical procedure, even a life-saving one. Now, we don't know the motivation behind Thompson's killing, nor would we speculate. But what we can say is this. The reaction from Americans who actually have to use private health insurance, and indeed private health insurance from this company, has been less than sympathetic. Here's one example from X. So it's a quote tweet. The original tweet says, "Just a reminder that Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Health, who was just shot and killed in New York, was a human being with a family. So many of the comments on his murder are despicable." And Julia Marie says, "He will be shown the same empathy he showed for others every single day." The mood on X was certainly not one of blanket solemnity or mourning. In fact, Thompson's death seems to have unlocked a level of rage around the United States private healthcare model, where insurance companies amass vast profits while around tens of thousands of Americans die each year as a direct result of not being able to afford health insurance. This post has been viewed nearly 800,000 times on X. It reads, "A photographer took pictures of people before and after she told them a health insurance CEO was killed." And so you've got people there on the one side, kind of smiling, people on the other side looking pretty delighted. Americans took to social media to share affecting personal stories of their experiences with United Healthcare. This is another post from X. "Today, I'm thinking about the time United Healthcare suddenly decided to stop paying for my chemotherapy and didn't bother telling me, so the nurses had to tell me when I checked in at the cancer center for my next treatment. Totally unrelated to any current news, of course." Some users anticipated the Liberal commentariat's response to the shooting. I'm going to read a couple more posts here. We've got this one. I have no patience for lib think pieces trying to humanize healthcare CEOs who let people die of cancer to afford their fourth yacht. You people are embarrassing. We've got another one from Ashley Ray. Democrats need to move to the right. The most I have seen this country united in years is over the assassination of a healthcare CEO, so I don't know if that's true. But this next post showed an unusual breakout of solidarity between users of X. It starts with this tweet. It says, all-time great ratio. They pulled the post down when it got to about 21,000 laughing emojis. And it is, I think, a Facebook post, and it's from United Health Group, saying how sad they are at the killing of their CEO. And at the bottom, you'll see that it had 19.3 thousand laughing emojis, 1.9 thousand crying emojis, and 1.6 thousand, I don't know, hugging heart emojis. So as he said there, it got pulled down when it got to about 21,000. And then that tweet gets community noted with this. Readers added context I thought people might want to know. The post has not been taken down, and as of 5th of December, has around 32,000 ha-ha reactions. Shouldn't laugh, really. Helena, we're not condoning murder here. We're not encouraging nothing. But these health insurance companies, probably, along with arms dealers, amongst the most vile corporations on earth. Is this apparent bubbling up of counter-CEO revolutionary spirit overdue?
Unfortunately, thoughts and prayers, I don't think they were covered in his plan, unfortunately. So he's SOL in that regard. But I think you're right that there is a really large outpouring of it's kind of grim mirth over the circumstances of this guy's death. Now, it's interesting that you brought up in the piece there the fact that the shells of the ammunition cartridges that he used, had deny, defend, depose written on them. Somebody on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, they said that this is eerily similar to a book that's written about the insurance sector called Delay, Deny, Defend, that specifically goes into detail into how the insurance sector tries to make sure that it doesn't have to pay out claims by going through all of the legal processes that it needs to ensure that it doesn't. And it seems to me very, very close in nature as to the kind of things that are the sentiments we've seen expressed on social media as to the moral sewer that is the private healthcare industry, especially in America. There's one thing to be a private healthcare provider being forced to compete with universal healthcare, where literally if you don't offer something that is actually worth pursuing, then you don't have any business, right? So that actually forces the private sector to provide a product that's worth paying money for. Whereas in America, where there's basically no public option outside of like Medicare, which is just the government paying for your private healthcare anyway, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. And the private health companies know they have a monopoly and they know that they can get away with this stuff. And people are absolutely furious about this. And as well, they should be. It just shows you how much different the election could have been if the Democrats are running on Medicare for all, for example. But I digress. And it's also interesting that we need to talk about a concept called social murder, which is something that was thought of by Engels all these years ago, which is essentially the concept of the removal or the withholding of things necessary for life by people who afforded these things. For example, say a government deliberately restricting access to welfare for people who need it to survive, or indeed a private healthcare company creating a paywall behind the necessary things for life, such as healthcare, which of course is an inelastic market. You can't not pay for it, so you'll pay whatever it takes. And they know they have this strong position, and so they'll charge people through the teeth, or they'll deny coverage, and they'll make as much money as they can, specifically because that's what drives shareholder value, because they have no human interest. The negative externalities of human suffering is something that's not relative to them, or it's not relevant to them, because what's actually important is the one thing, which is their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. And it's interesting the tweet said about, well, the left versus the right in terms of how they perceive this issue. And we're seeing a lot, I think it's not just in this specific instance, but broadly across all of politics, across the left and the right, there's this broad anti-corporate politics. People hate corporations, whereas obviously the left have always hated corporations because, we're anti-capitalists and corporations are a capitalist entity. But the right wing that's now kind of supporting this popular capitalism, as Aaron Bastani calls it, that we see from like Reform UK, talking about like the small businesses versus like the big businesses, this idea of the World Economic Forum trying to take over all the small businesses in the world by owning everything. Broadly, everyone's noticing the upward funnel of wealth and of money and of resources into the pockets of the 1% and the corporations in this country. The question is, of course, who are the people with the solutions? And at the end of the day, it's going to be the left, because we're the ones who actually genuinely believe in anti-capitalist politics, whereas the right, they only posture at it when it's relevant to them.
You know, there are plenty of reasons to hate United Healthcare in particular. I read this morning that they use an AI to determine whether or not a particular case is covered by the insurance that you've spent thousands of dollars on. And it's wrong 90% of the time. And what that means is that the AI makes this judgment, says, oh, I'm sorry, you have to take your own appendix out because we're not going to cover it. And then when it is taken to court to rule on that judgment, 90% of judges are like, no, actually, they should have had an operation and not done it on their kitchen table, actually.